All right. So, hello, everybody. Greg Thompson with Accelerate Action Coach Business Coaching. Today, we're talking with Melissa Vine from the Beacon. Melissa, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Greg. Good morning.
So, let's tell everybody about what is the Beacon, how long has your business been around, and what all do you do?
Sure. So we are a nonprofit that started in 1980, and we have a large house in Sherman Hill. And we work with women who are coming out of incarceration, substance use, domestic violence, or off the streets, and they come and live here for 6 to 24 months. They work through our programming, which takes a minimum of 6 months, and it addresses things like mental health, substance use treatment, financial literacy, career development, fitness, nutrition. It's a holistic approach to helping a woman to heal from trauma and move on to live a productive life. And then we help them kind of get situated in their own apartment after that and provide additional support and services for another year following their time, just to ensure that they have what they need to continue in their success.
Wow, what an interesting assignment you've taken on there. So that's pretty cool. So who is obviously you kind of mentioned there about people coming or ladies, females coming out of incarceration. So is that your target market then? Do you have to go out and try to find those people that need the help, or does somebody contact you and then do you help place them then? So what are the next steps then after that?
Yeah, so most of our clients are referred here, but we have tried to make it easier so that if anyone has heard about us or is interested, they can just go right to our website at beaconoflifedm.org and apply to stay here. It's $105 a week, so there is a minimum amount that includes rent, utilities, Wi-Fi, others. We're stocked with like food and toiletries and things like that, furniture. And then basically the referrals come in from the prison counselors. So the prison counselors are working with the women, and so they kind of know who might be a good fit from their program. There has to be some level of mental health and physical health functioning so that they can experience success in the program. There's kind of a sweet spot of individuals that are a good fit for the program. Obviously, we don't have people here that are have a propensity for violence, things like that. So it's primarily women who have grown up in a situation where there was child abuse, trauma, molestation growing up in their home. And then as they became adults, maybe they got into domestic violence relationship. They've experienced continued violence as an adult. And when you go through all that kind of trauma, you're less likely to have a solid education. So then your wages might be lower. You're not feeling as good about yourself. And so just that self-efficacy piece, you don't believe you deserve more. And so a lot of times these women are making $9, $10, $11 an hour, which isn't enough to cover someone's basic expenses. And a lot of times you've got single moms, right? So they're also trying to pay for children, and at those wages, you can't even afford to get an apartment. And so there's a lot of stress that comes with generational poverty and trauma. And then you add in things like, growing up experiencing maybe homophobia if you're in the LGBTQ community, or maybe you've experienced a lot of racism. And so by the time they come to us, they have, or by the time they get to be adults and they've gone through so much trauma and hardship, and they don't see, you don't have the resources or the skills to get out of that place. Substances are a way to kind of cope with the pain, and also selling them is a way to just pay your basic expenses, right? And so when you grow up in that environment, that's what you learn. It's not really seen, and I grew up middle class, so substances were something that was over there, out there. I wasn't close to it, but when you grow up surrounded by it as just a coping mechanism, it feels very normal. It does not feel, certainly doesn't feel criminal. And so for the women who come to here, so then you take a woman who's gone through all of that trauma and stress and crisis, and then they're using substances, or maybe selling them, or selling their body, or being, sex trafficking is a part of this too. Then they land in prison because of these things, right? So if you can imagine someone who has a significant amount of trauma, they've been victimized again and again, and then you put them in prison where there's more isolation and more shame, it's really not helping these women to get any better. It's not it's not a productive system. And we're one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and we have one of the largest prison systems. We spend the most money on it, and we have the worst results. So I'm very passionate about the work we do here, because what I'm asking is saying, hey, send women to the Beacon instead of sending them to prison, because here they can get healing, they can get support, mental health, and substance use treatment, healthy relationships classes. Like, it's so much more effective than prison. And prison costs $92 a day. Beacon is $43 a day. So to me, this is just a no-brainer. And that's why I started going back to law school, because I'm like, we need to change this system, and I want a seat at the table. And so maybe if I have a JD, they'll let me in. So
Well, that's excellent. So how does a female graduate from your, or transition then? What is their next step? Totally out on their own, being self-sufficient? Tell me, how do they graduate? When do they graduate? That type from your
yeah. So there's 5 phases in the program, and then with each program, there's a little less restrictions and a little bit more responsibility. So it kind of goes from a place of like, hey, let's get you started with some basic support, and then as you move through the program, you're kind of growing and you're preparing for for independence. It's much like a parent raising a child, and I don't mean that in a condescending way, but for a lot of these clients, they did not have the childhood that they needed, right? And so in some ways you are kind of doing some reparenting, as far as like, you've got this, I believe in you, you have value, right? And so then as they move through those phases, and their curfew gets later and they have more responsibilities, once they complete all 5 phases, which include regularly attending mental health counseling and substance use treatment if they need it, going to their financial literacy classes at Evelyn K. Davis Center, maintaining a job, they have to have they have to stay up on rent, as well as have $600 in their savings account and ready for when they graduate. And then also just living well in community, right? Are they getting along with the other women here and the staff here? Are they completing their chores and those things too? So.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you have you're fulfilling quite a need out there. So it's got to be a pretty fulfilling job that you're doing. So congratulations on that. So how many people do you have on your team? What all expertise do they bring to the table? Tell us about your team.
Yeah, sure. So me as the executive director, my background is I've owned several businesses. I've sold most of them at this point. And I'm a licensed mental health counselor. So I did that for a few years before coming here. And then I do speaking on the side as well. And then, like I said, I'm also in law school full time. So that's what I bring. And then I have a case manager, Jackie, and she works with the clients on their, just as they go through the process, right? Like, she's the main touch point to help them determine what are their goals, and how can she give them the resources and support to help them get there. So we're very client-centered in that way. And so she has a background in workforce development, and then she is a felon herself from many, many years ago. And so she is great because she can understand, what the clients have been through and the difficulty of coming out of prison, because, right, you come out and now a lot of the jobs and a lot of the housing are not available to you because you have a felon charge. And then I have our office manager. She kind of just oversees the bookkeeping and operations. And then we have our house manager, and she oversees the resident assistants. So we are staffed 24/7 with resident assistants, just to help with whatever needs arise. They help check people in and out. If they have narcotic medications, they dispense those. We also do somewhat regular but random, like, room searches and drug testing and breathalyzers, not because we're trying to catch anybody in the act, but just because they came here because they want accountability to stay clean and sober. So we just check in with them and making sure that they're meeting their goals and everything's going okay, nothing's sliding past us. So yeah, so that's our team. There's about, between the full-time and the part-time staff, there's about 10 of us. So.
Oh, very good. Very good. So last year was a pretty crazy year with the whole COVID pandemic going on, and really created a lot of changes that we all had to learn to deal with. How did COVID pandemic make changes, or what changes did you have to make at the Beacon to deal with all that?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it was difficult. We had an outbreak come through the house, even though we have a lot of safety protocols in place with masks and you know, sanitizing and all of the things you're supposed to do, but we're in such close quarters, and we can have up to 34 women living here plus our office staff. So there's a lot of people in one house. And so when a couple people got COVID, I mean, it went through the house pretty quickly. So that was a kind of a difficult month, trying to keep everybody separate who was testing positive, and over half our staff was out, and so covering lots of shifts, and I don't ever want to have to do that again. And then of course, you know, part of our income as a nonprofit comes from people paying rent, and so we brought our numbers down with COVID. The prisons were releasing less women, and so, you know, we had kind of a hit in that way financially. I just came here a year ago, and in the first 6 months, though, we did double our individual and corporate donors. So that was, and then we got the PPP loan. So those things were able to help, you know, kind of keep us afloat for the year. And actually, we're doing quite well financially, you know. But looking at you know, coming out of that, we really leaned down, right? So it forces you to take a look at your expenses and see where can you cut things. And we closed our thrift store, kind of because of COVID, but it had been struggling for a few years. And when I got here and looked at the financial statements, that just seemed like a good decision, and which was hard to do. There's always grieving that goes around things like that, and it's hard news to deliver to some folks. But I think in the end, it was good for organizational health. And then, yeah, so moving in this next year, we're, you know, just looking at, we're in a really solid place right now, the staff and board and finances, and looking at ways we can grow. So it's going to be an exciting year ahead. So.
Well, very good. So there's a saying out there that smart people learn from their mistakes, wise people learn from other people's mistakes. So what would you like to share with everybody on maybe some learnings or challenges that you've gone through that maybe you could give some heads up to, so not everybody has to go through those same learnings?
Oh, I like that. I think I have been more the smart person than the wise person. I've made a lot of mistakes myself. Yeah, so I went through a period of time when, you know, I was married. We owned multiple businesses, quite successful. And then when I chose to get a divorce, there was domestic violence and sexual assault in that marriage. And when I got divorced, I went from wealthy to poverty overnight. And so I had no money, had 4 little kids. I was in grad school for counseling. I mean, it was a really hard time, and I was in a place of scramble, right? And so I was just trying to get my finances back in order, get my life in order. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but you know, I don't know if I would take those back. I mean, I think that they were really stressful. The first business I opened on my own, it was losing money. I did sell it, but I sold it at a loss. And I tried different things, and some things worked and some things didn't. I've had to learn from like how to treat people well, how to lead. I've had to remove a lot of perfectionism from kind of my character. Therapy has helped me a lot. I mean, I think more than anything, and of course I'm a therapist, so I would say that, but I think going to therapy and being honest about who I am as a person, and not being afraid to look in the mirror, like really look in the mirror. And when you get in those dark places of shame, where you are like wrestling with those things about yourself that you don't want to believe are true, to continue to sit in those places and not to run from them or hide from them. I know what my shame triggers are. Like if I am feeling incompetent, or I'm feeling immature, or I'm feeling impulsive, those, I know that if someone says something or I do something that hits on one of those things, I know I will go to that dark room, and the more I can acknowledge that and be open about that, the less likely that shame has hold over me. And if I can function from a place of courage, as opposed to fear, I can get a lot further in life. So.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. Tell us how people can reach out to the Beacon, find out more about your organization. Perhaps they're looking for work. They would like to get in that line of work, or perhaps they know somebody that could use their services. So how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our web address is www.beacon, BEACON, of life, DM, as in Des Moines, .org. And our phone number is 515-244-4713. We've also got a cake gala coming up October 15th. And so that'll be at the River Center downtown. It's a very, very nice event. We auction lots of fun silent auction items and professionally decorated cakes. We'll have 60 of them to choose from. A very nice meal, live music and dancing. And it's a great way to support the Beacon, but also have a good time. And I know coming out of COVID, lots of us are hungry for social interaction and to get dressed up and have fun with friends. So that's a great way to kind of get involved and learn more. You can also, if you go to our website there, right on the front page, you can sign up for our newsletter. So if you want to get our monthly e-newsletter or our annual print letter, you can sign up for either of those at that point. Or if you're like, hey, I'm really interested in, becoming a supporter of the Beacon, learning more, feel free to reach out to me and we can grab coffee and talk about what that would look like. My email address is director@beaconoflifedm.org. And my name's Melissa again.
Oh, thank you. All right. So one last question, and we'll let you go. Tell everybody what inspires you.
In this work, what inspires me is when folks who have not had a lot of exposure to generational poverty or the prison system take interest and genuinely like listen and hear and try to understand. A lot of the meetings I do are with middle class people. A lot of the presentations are with middle and upper class people. And sometimes as a middle class person myself, you can feel removed from what's happening in the lower class and in the prison system because it's not people you interact with every day. So when I meet people who are like, yeah, I didn't know this was happening. I'm really interested. How can I help? How can I learn more? That inspires me because that takes a step of courage because it's a little bit uncomfortable to learn about things that are unfamiliar to you. So I'm inspired by folks who are open-minded and listening.
Oh, very good. All right. So this is Greg Thompson, Accelerate Action Coach, Business Coaching. We've been talking with Melissa Vine from the Beacon. Melissa, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have your organization and you have a great 2021.
Thank you so much.